Hey there. Tonight we will talk about the facts of Red Dead Redemption 2. As you know, it's a story of loyalty, betrayal, and what it costs to find redemption when it's almost too late. If this kind of tale helps you rest, feel free to like the video, but only if it brings you some peace. And I'd love to know in the comments where you're listening from. It's a real comfort to know who else is out there, settling in. Red Dead Redemption 2 took 8 years to develop, with Rockstar beginning work on it shortly after the first Red Dead Redemption was released in 2010. The game involved all of Rockstar's studios working together, with over 2,000 people contributing to its creation across offices in New York, London, Paris, San Diego, and other locations worldwide. This massive collaborative effort resulted in one of the most expensive video games ever made, with estimates putting the total budget including marketing at over $500 million. The scale of development was unprecedented even for Rockstar, requiring coordination across time zones and cultures to create a cohesive vision for what Arthur Morgan's story would be. The motion capture for Red Dead Redemption 2 involved over 1,200 days of filming, with actors performing scenes in full costume on elaborate sets built specifically for the game. Roger Clark, who played Arthur Morgan, spent years working on the game, recording dialogue and performing motion capture for countless scenes. The mocap studio was designed to look like Western sets, with props and structures that helped actors immerse themselves in the world and understand the physicality of life in 1899. This attention to detail in performance capture resulted in some of the most nuanced and believable character acting ever seen in a video game, with subtle facial expressions and body language that conveyed emotion without dialogue. Arthur Morgan's journal is completely handwritten and illustrated, with unique entries for hundreds of different events and encounters throughout the game. If you complete different missions in different orders, Arthur's journal entries change to reflect what he's already experienced and how he's feeling at that moment. The journal contains over 500 pages of content when fully completed, including sketches of animals, people, and locations that Arthur draws from his perspective. Roger Clark actually learned to draw and write in Arthur's style during development, contributing to the authenticity of the journal entries, though the final versions were created by Rockstar's artists based on his work. The game's map is one of the largest ever created by Rockstar, spanning approximately 75 square kilometers of diverse terrain. But what makes it remarkable isn't just the size, it's the density of detail and handcrafted content filling every corner. Unlike many open-world games that use procedural generation or repeated assets, nearly every tree, rock, and structure in Red Dead Redemption 2 was individually placed by level designers. The world took years to build, with different teams responsible for different regions, all working to ensure that each area felt distinct, while still fitting into the cohesive whole. The terrain includes forests, swamps, mountains, plains, deserts, and more, each with appropriate vegetation, wildlife, and weather patterns. There are over 200 species of animals in Red Dead Redemption 2, each with unique behaviours, animations, and ecological roles. Animals don't just spawn randomly near players, they exist in the world with their own routines and territories. Predators hunt prey animals, which graze and move in herds, which avoid areas where predators are present. Birds fly in formations appropriate to their species, fish swim in schools, and even insects like fireflies and butterflies behave according to time of day and weather conditions. Rockstar studied real animal behavior extensively, using reference footage and consulting with experts to ensure that animals moved and acted authentically. The horse mechanics in RDR2 are incredibly detailed, with each horse having its own stats, temperament and personality. There are 19 different horse breeds in the game, each with multiple coat variations, and each individual horse is unique. Horses need to be fed, groomed, and bonded with over time, and they remember how you treat them. If you're cruel to your horse, it will be skittish and less responsive, but if you care for it properly, it becomes braver and more reliable. Horses can trip and fall if you push them too hard on rough terrain. They panic during gunfights and storms, and they can permanently die if you're not careful. The game forces you to care about your horse in ways most games never attempt, creating genuine emotional attachment to what could have been just a vehicle. Arthur's hair and beard grow in real time based on how much time passes in the game, and you need to visit barbers or use tonics to style them. The hair growth system tracks different areas separately, so your beard can grow long while your hair stays short if you only cut one. If you want a specific look, you need to plan ahead and use hair tonics to accelerate growth, then maintain it through regular barber visits. This system creates a connection between Arthur's appearance and the passage of time, making the story feel like it's happening over months rather than in some timeless present. Players often develop strong preferences for how Arthur should look, treating his grooming as seriously as his weapons or equipment. The game contains over 500,000 lines of dialogue, more than any previous Rockstar game. This includes not just story missions but random encounters, NPC conversations, companion dialogue during travel, and contextual comments based on what Arthur is wearing, who he's with, what he's doing, and what has happened recently in the story. The dialogue system is sophisticated enough that characters reference previous conversations and events, creating continuity that makes the world feel reactive and alive. NPCs remember if you've helped them before, if you've antagonized them, or if they've heard about your reputation, and they adjust their dialogue accordingly. Camp interactions change based on Arthur's honor level, how much money he's donated, what missions he's completed, and how long it's been since he last visited. Dutch might comment on Arthur being away too long, or praise him for a recent job well done. Camp members engage in different activities throughout the day, having conversations that reveal their personalities and relationships with each other. You can stumble upon private moments between characters that provide context and depth to their stories. The camp feels like a living place, with its own rhythms and dynamics, rather than a static hub where you pick up missions. The weather system in RDR2 is dynamic and regional, with different areas having different climate patterns. The swamps of Lemoyne are humid and prone to thunderstorms. The mountains have snow and blizzards. The plains have clear skies and occasional rain. Weather affects gameplay significantly, with storms reducing visibility, rain making terrain muddy and slippery, and extreme cold requiring Arthur to wear appropriate clothing or suffer health penalties. The transition between weather states is gradual and realistic, with clouds building before storms and fog rolling in naturally. Lightning during storms can actually strike trees and start fires, and you can be struck if you're in the wrong place. Arthur's weight fluctuates based on how much you feed him, affecting both his appearance and his stats. If you don't eat enough, Arthur becomes underweight, losing health but gaining stamina. If you eat too much, he becomes overweight, gaining health but losing stamina. The game actually changes Arthur's character model to reflect his weight, with his face becoming gaunt or fuller and his body shape changing. This system forces players to think about eating regularly, not just when health is low, creating another layer of immersion and simulation. The attention to detail extends to what Arthur eats, affecting how quickly his weight changes, with high-calorie foods having more impact. The game's economy is carefully balanced to create meaningful choices about spending money. Unlike most open-world games where you're swimming in cash by mid-game, RDR2 keeps money somewhat scarce, making purchases feel significant. Guns are expensive, clothing costs money, maintaining your equipment requires funds, and the camp constantly needs donations. This scarcity creates tension between saving for that expensive weapon you want and helping the camp or buying supplies. The economy makes you feel like an outlaw, scraping by rather than a wealthy adventurer, which fits the story's themes about the gang struggling to survive as their way of life disappears. There are over 300 random encounters in Red Dead Redemption 2, with many having multiple variations and outcomes based on your choices. You might encounter a snakebite victim who needs medicine, but whether you help them and how you help them creates different results. The same encounter location might feature different events depending on time of day, weather, or what point you're at in the story. These encounters make the world feel unpredictable and alive, ensuring that travelling between destinations is rarely boring. Some random encounters start long quest lines with recurring characters, while others are one-time events that still manage to tell complete little stories. The St. Denis bank robbery mission required 18 months of development by itself, with the complexity of the heist, the number of NPCs, and the various possible outcomes requiring extensive testing and iteration. The mission showcases the game's technical achievement, with dozens of characters all acting independently, the building being fully detailed across multiple floors, and the chaos of the shootout being maintained without performance issues. This single mission exemplifies the level of craft and detail that went into every major story moment, with months of work invested to create 20 minutes of gameplay. Arthur's tuberculosis diagnosis changes not just the story, but also the gameplay in subtle ways. After he becomes sick, Arthur's stamina drains faster, he coughs during quiet moments, potentially alerting enemies, and his Deadeye ability is affected. The game visually shows Arthur's deterioration through his character model, with his face becoming more drawn and pale as the disease progresses. This mechanical representation of illness creates empathy and understanding for Arthur's condition in ways that cutscenes alone couldn't achieve. Players feel Arthur's weakness during combat and exploration, making the disease personal rather than just a plot point. The Guarma chapter was one of the most controversial parts of development, with some team members arguing it broke the pace, and others insisting it was necessary for the story. The entire island had to be created as a separate environment, with unique vegetation, animals and architecture, representing a massive investment of resources for a few hours of gameplay. The decision to keep Guarma despite the costs shows Rockstar's commitment to their narrative vision, even when it meant creating content that players couldn't freely explore afterward. The chapter serves crucial story purposes, showing the gang at their lowest point and breaking the routine of camp life in American wilderness, even if it means temporarily losing access to the full map. The voice acting sessions for RDR2 sometimes involve the entire cast recording together, rather than individual actors recording their lines separately. This approach, while more expensive and logistically complex, allowed actors to play off each other's energy and create more natural interactions. The cast would run through scenes multiple times, with directors allowing improvisation and natural dialogue to emerge. Many of the camp conversations and incidental dialogue came from these collaborative sessions where actors were encouraged to talk in character and build relationships organically. This method created the authentic feeling of a group of people who've known each other for years. The game's code contains over 500,000 lines, managing everything from AI behaviour to physics systems to the complex interactions between player actions and world reactions. The AI system alone is remarkably sophisticated, with NPCs having schedules, relationships, memories and reactions to player behaviour that feel organic rather than scripted. The technical achievement of keeping all these systems running simultaneously while maintaining stable performance is often underappreciated by players who simply experience the result without understanding the complexity underneath. Arthur's interactions with other characters change based on his honour level, with high honour Arthur being more pleasant and thoughtful, while low honour Arthur is bitter and cruel. The dialogue actually changes, not just the tone but the actual words spoken, with hundreds of variations recorded to reflect Arthur's moral state. Characters in camp react differently to Arthur based on his honour, with some appreciating his good deeds and others commenting on his brutality. This system makes honour feel meaningful beyond just affecting the ending. It changes how Arthur exists in the world and how others perceive him throughout the entire game. The wanted system is more sophisticated than it first appears, with witnesses needing to report crimes to lawmen before you get a bounty, and lawmen needing to identify you specifically before your bounty activates. If you commit a crime while wearing a mask and different clothes, witnesses might report the crime but not identify you personally. The law responds differently based on the severity of the crime and the location, with St. Denis having more lawmen who respond faster than remote areas. This system rewards players who think tactically about criminal activity, planning escapes and using disguises rather than just shooting everyone who sees them. The photography mode allows players to capture stunning images, but it's also used by the development team to check lighting and composition throughout the world. The tools are sophisticated enough that professional photographers have praised the level of control offered, with options for focal length, aperture, and other real camera settings. The community of RDR2 photographers has created thousands of beautiful images that showcase the game's visual design in ways that normal gameplay doesn't always highlight. Some players spend more time photographing the world than actually playing missions, treating the game as a virtual frontier photography simulator. The companion dialogue during long rides is context sensitive and changes based on numerous factors. Characters comment on the weather, the terrain you're passing through, recent events in the story, and their relationship with Arthur. If you've been ignoring camp requests, someone might mention it. If you recently donated a lot of money, they might thank you. These conversations make travel time feel productive and interesting, rather than empty transit between objectives. The game rarely forces you to ride long distances without some form of entertainment or character development occurring during the journey. Arthur's drawings in his journal change quality based on his honour level, with high honour Arthur creating more detailed and artistic sketches, while low honour Arthur's drawings are rougher and more cynical. The journal entries themselves reflect his mental state and moral outlook, with honourable Arthur expressing regret and hope, while dishonourable Arthur becomes increasingly bitter and nihilistic. This subtle detail rewards players who regularly check the journal, providing insight into Arthur's psychology that supplements but doesn't replace the main story's character development. The game's sound design includes over 25 hours of original music composed by Woody Jackson, plus hundreds of ambient tracks and musical stings that play during specific situations. The music responds dynamically to what you're doing, with combat tracks building as fights escalate, and exploration music shifting based on terrain and time of day. The sound team recorded actual period instruments, and studied historical music to ensure authenticity, creating a soundscape that feels appropriate to 1899 while still being emotionally affecting for modern players. The use of silence is also carefully considered, with some scenes deliberately having no music to create specific moods. The horse's testicles shrink in cold weather due to the game's physics system affecting all body parts based on temperature. This became a meme when players noticed it, but it's actually just one result of Rockstar's commitment to realistic animal anatomy and physics. The level of detail extends to every aspect of animal bodies, with muscles moving under skin, breathing visible in cold air, and injuries affecting movement realistically. While the testicle shrinking is amusing, it represents the thoroughness of the simulation rather than being a deliberate feature someone decided the game needed. The camp ledger shows exactly where your donations go and what upgrades they purchase, creating transparency about how the gang manages resources. You can see who's contributing and who's not, with some characters consistently pulling their weight while others rarely donate. This system makes you think about the camp as an economic unit struggling to survive, not just a collection of characters. The upgrades you purchase have visible effects on camp quality, with better tents, food supplies, and amenities appearing as you invest money. The ledger becomes a way to track how well the gang is doing financially across the story. There are 14 different types of tobacco plants scattered throughout the world, each growing in appropriate climates and terrain. The attention to botanical accuracy extends to hundreds of plant species, with Rockstar consulting botanists to ensure that vegetation matched what would actually grow in these regions during this time period. You can pick these plants for crafting, or just appreciate them as part of the environmental detail. The game even simulates plant growth in some cases, with certain species only appearing in specific seasons. This botanical accuracy contributes to the world feeling real and lived in rather than artificial. The game's epilogue was controversial during development, with debates about whether players would want to keep playing after Arthur's death, or if it would feel like an anticlimax. The decision to include substantial epilogue content playing as John Marston was made to provide closure and connect to the first Red Dead Redemption, while also giving players time to process Arthur's death. The epilogue is nearly as long as some full games, with its own character arc for John and significant story content. This structure means the game doesn't end with tragedy, but instead shows life continuing, which some players appreciated and others felt diminished Arthur's story. Arthur's hat is tracked individually as a unique item that can be lost, requiring you to retrieve it or get a new one from your horse. The game stores your hat's location when it falls off, allowing you to run back and pick it up during gunfights or after accidents. This creates funny moments where you're more concerned about retrieving your hat than winning the fight, but it also creates attachment to Arthur's signature headwear. Different hats provide different bonuses and suit different outfits, encouraging players to collect various styles. The hat becomes part of Arthur's identity, with some players feeling wrong when he's not wearing his iconic gambler hat. The saloon piano players actually play complete songs using accurate piano mechanics and finger positions. Motion capture actors who are skilled pianists perform the songs, ensuring that the hand movements matched what you'd actually do to play those pieces. This attention to detail extends to other musical performances throughout the game, with guitarists, singers, and other musicians all being authentically captured. The songs are period appropriate, drawn from actual music that would have been popular in 1899, creating historical authenticity in the entertainment options available to Arthur. The bounty hunting side missions feature unique characters with their own stories and personalities, not just generic criminals. Each bounty can be brought in alive or dead, affecting your reward and honour, and some bounties have additional complexity if you investigate their circumstances. The missions encourage creativity and approach, with players able to use stealth, tracking, disguises, or direct confrontation. Some bounties become sympathetic when you learn their stories, creating moral complexity about whether they deserve to be captured. The variety in these missions keeps them engaging even after completing dozens of them. The fast travel system is deliberately limited, requiring you to be in camp or at a train station, forcing players to experience the world rather than skipping past it. This design decision was controversial, with some players frustrated by travel time, while others appreciated being forced to engage with the environment. The limitation creates opportunities for random encounters and environmental storytelling that would be missed if players could fast travel freely. It also maintains the sense that the world is large and dangerous, that distance matters and travel has inherent risk. The trapper and fence characters serve as outlets for unique items you collect through hunting and looting, creating entire crafting systems around animal pelts and stolen goods. The trapper crafts clothing and equipment from perfect animal pelts, encouraging you to hunt carefully and preserve quality. The fence buys stolen items and sells unique weapons and talismans, rewarding exploration and criminal activity. These systems create gameplay loops independent of the main story, giving players reasons to explore and engage with the world's systems even when not on missions. The specific items they offer change based on what you sell them, making each player's relationship with these vendors unique. The game simulates alcohol's effects on Arthur in impressive detail, with the screen blurring and movement becoming difficult as he drinks more. Different alcoholic beverages have different strengths, with whiskey affecting you faster than beer. If Arthur drinks too much, he blacks out and wakes up in random locations, sometimes having lost money or gotten into trouble he doesn't remember. This realistic depiction of drinking serves both gameplay purposes, providing temporary buffs with risks, and story purposes, showing Arthur's relationship with alcohol and his tendency to drink when stressed. The herb picking animations change based on what plant you're harvesting, with Arthur using appropriate techniques for different species. He carefully digs up some plants while quickly grabbing others, pulls some up by roots while cutting others with his knife. This variety in animation keeps a repetitive activity interesting, and shows Rockstar's commitment to avoiding repeated animations wherever possible. The same principle applies throughout the game, with hundreds of unique animations for different interactions, ensuring that actions rarely look identical, even when mechanically similar. The legendary animals are based on real wildlife from the region, but exaggerated to mythic proportions, creating boss fight equivalents in the hunting system. Each legendary animal requires specific tactics and preparation. You can't just ride up and shoot them. They're significantly larger and more dangerous than normal animals of their species, and they provide unique materials for crafting the best items. Hunting legendary animals feels like completing quests, rather than just gathering resources, with each hunt being a memorable encounter. The legendary animals contribute to the game's mythology, creating stories about the giant bear or the legendary buck that players share. The newspaper system provides commentary on your actions and world events, with articles changing based on what you've done and how the story has progressed. If you robbed a train, there might be an article about it. If you helped someone in a random encounter, they might be interviewed. The newspapers track the broader political and social context of 1899 America, providing historical grounding for the game's events. Reading newspapers gives you insight into how the public perceives the gang and what's happening in the wider world beyond what you directly experience. Some players collect every newspaper edition as a historical record of their playthrough. The camp chores like chopping wood and carrying supplies are optional but affect camp morale and how characters view Arthur. Taking time to do chores shows Arthur cares about the camp and isn't above manual labour despite being one of the gang's best gunmen. These small interactions contribute to the sense of being part of a community rather than just a protagonist who shows up for missions. The chores are brief enough not to be tedious, but present enough to make you feel like a contributing member of the camp ecosystem. The custom outfits system lets you save specific clothing combinations, but it's more complex than most games because weather and social context matter. An outfit appropriate for cold weather will make you overheat in the swamps, and fancy clothes suitable for St. Denis look ridiculous in the wilderness. The game encourages you to create multiple outfits for different purposes, rather than finding one look and sticking with it. This system makes clothing functional rather than purely cosmetic, creating meaningful choices about appearance that affect gameplay. The fishing mechanics are surprisingly deep, with different fish species requiring different baits, techniques, and locations. Legendary fish pose significant challenges, requiring patience and skill to catch. The fishing rod upgrades and lure variety create progression in what could have been a simple minigame. Some players spend hours fishing, treating it as a relaxing activity separate from the violence and stress of the main story. The fishing spots are often beautiful and peaceful, providing respite and demonstrating the game's environmental variety. The poker games in saloons use actual poker rules and feature AI opponents with different playing styles and tells. You can make money through skilled play, but you can also lose significantly if you're reckless. The poker games are complete enough that some players treat them as primary activities, spending entire sessions just playing cards. The different locations have different stakes and opponents, with St. Denis poker games being high stakes and intense while small town games are more casual. The inclusion of functional poker shows Rockstar's commitment to creating authentic period entertainment options. The O'Driscoll gang isn't just generic enemies, they have their own camps, hierarchies and storylines that intersect with the Van der Linde gang's troubles. The rivalry between Dutch and Colm O'Driscoll has history that gets revealed through missions and conversations. Some O'Driscoll encounters are scripted and significant, while others are random, creating the sense that they're actively operating in the world, rather than just spawning when you need enemies to fight. The game builds the O'Driscolls as credible threats with their own motivations, rather than just being targets for violence. The train system actually runs on schedules, with trains following routes between towns at specific times. You can board trains as a passenger, rob them, or derail them, with each approach having different consequences and rewards. The trains are fully detailed inside and out, with different classes of cars and appropriate NPCs in each section. Train robberies are complex operations requiring planning and execution, not just simple button presses. The trains contribute to the sense of the world functioning independently, carrying on their routes whether you interact with them or not. The photo mode was added in a post-launch update after players requested it, showing Rockstar's willingness to respond to community desires. The feature is more robust than many games' photo modes, offering extensive control over composition, filters, and framing. Players immediately began using it to create stunning images and tell visual stories about their time in the game. The addition of photo mode demonstrated that Rockstar viewed RDR2 as a living game deserving continued support, rather than a finished product to move on from. The honour system affects more than just the ending. It changes dialogue throughout the game, shop prices in some locations, and how NPCs react to Arthur's presence. High Honor Arthur gets discounts and friendly greetings, while Low Honor Arthur faces higher prices and hostile reactions. The system creates a subtle form of karma, where your actions have concrete consequences beyond just moral feelings. Some players maintain high honor throughout, others embrace being evil, and many fluctuate based on circumstances and role-playing choices. The cinematic camera mode during travel shows off the world's beauty, while giving players a break from active control. The camera creates dynamic shots of Arthur riding, changing angles and framing artistically. This feature acknowledges that sometimes players want to experience the journey without constant input, creating a more passive viewing experience. The cinematic mode is popular for long rides across familiar territory, where you want to enjoy the scenery without focusing on navigation. The epilogue building missions, where John constructs his ranch house, are deliberately slow-paced and focused on honest work, contrasting with the violence and chaos of the main story. These missions show John trying to become a different person, doing legitimate labour instead of robbing and killing. The gameplay shifts to reflect this, focusing on hammering nails and hauling materials rather than shooting. Some players find these missions boring, while others appreciate the tonal shift and the emphasis on building a life rather than taking lives. The missions serve thematic purposes about redemption and change that purely action-focused content couldn't achieve. The game's credits last over 30 minutes and include everyone who contributed to the project, from lead developers to quality assurance testers to catering staff. The length of the credits reflects the massive scale of the production and the thousands of people whose work made the game possible. Watching the full credits while the epilogue music plays provides a moment to reflect on the journey and appreciate the human effort behind the experience. The credits are a testament to collaborative artistic creation on an unprecedented scale. The makeup and customization options for Arthur include scars, tattoos, and other permanent modifications that change his appearance throughout the playthrough. These options let players personalize Arthur to some degree, while staying within the bounds of his character. The customization is more limited than many games because Arthur is a defined character with his own personality, but there's enough flexibility to make players feel like their Arthur is unique. The visible aging and wear on Arthur's face throughout the story combines with player customization choices to create a personal version of the character. The ambient conversations in towns change based on time of day, day of week, and story progress, with NPCs discussing current events and their daily lives. You can learn about character relationships and town dynamics just by listening to people talk as you pass by. The conversations are contextual, referencing weather, recent crimes, political developments, and other dynamic elements. This background dialogue creates the impression of a world that exists beyond your interactions with it, where people have lives and concerns independent of the protagonist's story. The dueling system requires timing and nerve, forcing you to wait for the right moment to draw and target before firing. The tension of these encounters captures the classic Western standoff perfectly, creating moments of intense focus and quick violence. Duels are relatively rare, making each one feel significant rather than routine. The mechanics are simple but effective, requiring just enough skill that success feels earned without being overly complex. Duels represent Arthur at his most archetypal Western hero, facing enemies honourably in traditional fashion. The weapon customization allows for aesthetic changes like engravings and different metals alongside functional upgrades like improved sights and rifling. The combinations create unique weapons that reflect player personality and preferences. Some players create beautiful ornate guns, while others prefer practical battle-worn appearances. The customization system balances realism with player expression, ensuring weapons look and feel like 1899 technology, while still offering meaningful choices. Fully customized weapons become personal items that players are reluctant to replace, even when other options might be mechanically superior. The gang hideouts require different approaches, with some being best tackled through stealth, while others demand all-out assaults. The variety in hideout design prevents them from feeling repetitive despite similar objectives. Each hideout tells environmental stories about who lives there and what they're doing, with details that reward exploration and observation. Clearing hideouts provides loot and reduces criminal activity in regions, creating gameplay justification beyond just completion percentage. The hideouts feel like real places where outlaws would actually operate rather than just combat arenas. The camping system lets you set up temporary shelters in the wilderness, providing save points and crafting access while travelling. Camping creates quiet moments in the story, with Arthur cooking food, maintaining equipment and writing in his journal. These moments provide pacing relief from constant action, and let players engage with survival mechanics. The camps show Arthur's self-sufficiency and competence at frontier living, reinforcing his characterization as someone comfortable in the wilderness. Some players enjoy the camping system immensely, while others view it as an unnecessary complication. The legendary fish locations are often spectacular scenic spots, making the fishing expeditions as much about experiencing beautiful environments as catching specific fish. The challenge of landing legendary fish creates memorable struggles that players remember long after completion. The requirement to send fish to specific NPCs via mail creates a sense of connection to characters beyond the main cast. The legendary fish questline is entirely optional, but substantial, offering hours of content for players interested in completionist activities. The Native American characters are depicted with more nuance than most Western media attempts, though not without some problematic elements and stereotypes. The game tries to show the tragedy of their situation, as their land is taken and their way of life destroyed, making them sympathetic figures rather than just exotic others or faceless enemies. The consultation with cultural advisors helped create more authentic representation than Rockstar might have achieved alone. The Native American storylines contribute to the game's themes about civilization destroying the frontier and the costs of progress. While not perfect representation, the attempt to handle indigenous characters thoughtfully is notable. The Pinkerton Detective Agency appears as antagonists, representing the forces of government and corporate power aligned against the gang. The historical Pinkertons sued Rockstar over their depiction, claiming the game portrayed them unfairly and damaged their modern reputation. This lawsuit highlighted the complications of using real historical organizations in fiction, even when their actions in the period depicted were documented and controversial. The case was eventually settled, but it showed that even historical fiction can face legal challenges when depicting real entities. The women's suffrage storyline in Saint Denis shows period-appropriate political movements, with Arthur able to help protesters facing harassment and violence. This content acknowledges the social struggles of 1899 beyond just the outlaw narrative, showing that progress and change were happening through activism and organisation. Arthur's interactions with suffragettes can go various ways based on player choices, allowing different political positions to be explored. The inclusion of these historical movements creates context for the game's setting beyond just the frontier story. The vampire lurking in St. Denis is one of the game's strangest Easter eggs. requiring players to discover clues and track down this supernatural element in an otherwise grounded world. The vampire encounter is brief but memorable, providing horror elements that contrast with the Western genre completely. This inclusion shows Rockstar's playfulness and willingness to bend realism for interesting content. Most players never find the vampire naturally, discovering it through guides or accidentally, which makes the encounter feel like a secret reward for curious explorers. The serial killer mystery requires finding pieces of a map scattered across the world, leading you to a confrontation with the disturbed murderer. The questline is dark and disturbing, dealing with violent crime in ways the main story typically avoids. The investigation mechanics differ from normal gameplay, focusing on observation and deduction rather than action. The serial killer storyline was controversial for its graphic content, with some finding it gratuitously dark. The inclusion shows Rockstar's willingness to explore mature themes and create content that wouldn't suit all players. The various secret locations like abandoned villages, hidden caves, and mysterious structures reward exploration with environmental storytelling and unique loot. These locations often lack explicit objectives or quest markers, existing for players to discover organically. The stories told through environmental details and documents create narratives without cutscenes or dialogue. These secrets make the world feel larger and more mysterious than just the marked content suggests, rewarding players who pay attention and explore thoroughly. The UFO Easter eggs scattered throughout the game reference the UFO content from the first Red Dead Redemption, while adding new mysteries. These encounters are rare and require specific conditions to trigger, making them feel like genuine discoveries rather than expected content. The UFOs add an element of the unexplained and mysterious to the world, suggesting there are forces and phenomena beyond human understanding. While not connected to the main story, these Easter eggs contribute to community discussion and theory crafting. The Bigfoot controversy from the first game is referenced through various encounters and clues, with the game acknowledging the community's obsession with finding Sasquatch. The handling of this content is playful and self-aware, with Rockstar knowing players would search extensively for cryptid content. The balance between including weird secrets and maintaining the game's grounded tone is delicate, and RDR2 generally succeeds at letting strange content exist without breaking immersion. The time capsule mission chain spans decades, with letters from the past reaching characters in the present and creating connections across time. This content uses the game's historical setting to explore themes of legacy and memory, showing how actions and words can outlive their creators. The time capsules create melancholy reflections on mortality and the passage of time that complement the main story's themes about the dying frontier. The hidden gold bars scattered throughout the world provide significant financial rewards, but require puzzle solving or careful exploration to find. These treasures create motivation for exploration beyond just completing marked objectives. The gold bars can trivialize the economy if found early, giving players more money than they need and reducing the struggle the story emphasizes. Some players deliberately avoid finding all gold bars to maintain financial tension, while others enjoy the freedom wealth provides. The cave paintings and ancient rock art found throughout the world suggest the land's long history before white settlement. These art pieces provide silent commentary on colonization and the displacement of indigenous peoples who lived in these places for thousands of years before Arthur's time. The game doesn't explicitly narrate these political points, but presents the evidence for players to interpret. The rock art creates depth of history, showing that the frontier wasn't empty or new, but had been home to human cultures for millennia. The destroyed towns and abandoned settlements show the economic instability and violence of frontier life, where communities could thrive briefly then vanish when circumstances changed. These locations are melancholy reminders that not everyone succeeded on the frontier, that many dreams died in these places. The environmental storytelling in abandoned locations is often tragic, showing the human cost of westward expansion and economic exploitation. These sites create texture and historical depth, showing that the world existed before Arthur and will continue after him. The gravesite for Arthur at the mountain overlook where he watched the sunset is only accessible if he died with high honour, creating a peaceful final resting place for a man who found some redemption. Players who earned good honour can visit Arthur's grave as Jon, creating an emotional moment of reflection. The grave becomes a memorial where players process their feelings about Arthur's death and the story's conclusion. This location serves as a pilgrimage site for players who want to pay respect to a character they came to love. The difference in Jon's epilogue gameplay compared to Arthur's main story creates intentional contrast, showing Jon as less skilled and refined than Arthur was. Jon has lower stats and different animations, making him feel like a distinct character rather than just a different skin on Arthur. This choice reinforces that Jon and Arthur are different men with different capabilities respecting both characters' identities. Some players appreciate this distinction, while others wish Jon played identically to Arthur, but the choice was deliberate and meaningful. The increased police presence and industrial development visible in the epilogue shows how quickly the West was changing in just a few years. The world Jon inherits is more civilized and regulated than the one Arthur knew, with outlaw life becoming increasingly difficult. This change reinforces the game's themes about the death of the frontier and the impossibility of maintaining the outlaw lifestyle as America modernizes. The song that plays during Arthur's final ride differs based on his honor level, with That's the Way It Is playing for High Honor Arthur, in a version that emphasizes hope and redemption, while Low Honor Arthur gets a darker version emphasizing his failures and cruelty. This musical choice creates different emotional tones for the ending, rewarding or punishing players based on how they played Arthur. The song has become iconic in the community, with many players considering it one of gaming's most emotional musical moments. The placement of this song during the final ride to confront Micah creates a powerful combination of music, visuals, and narrative culmination. The mission where Arthur takes Jon's son Jack fishing is one of the game's most quietly powerful moments, showing Arthur connecting with the next generation and trying to be a positive influence despite his own issues. The fishing trip lets Arthur be gentle and paternal, qualities he rarely gets to express. Jack's innocence and trust contrasts with the violence and betrayal consuming the adult gang members. This mission becomes more poignant in retrospect after Arthur's death, as one of Jack's last peaceful memories with the man who helped save his father. The fishing trip represents the normal life Arthur never had and never will have. The deck collection missions are morally complex, with Arthur strong-arming poor people who borrowed from Strauss and can't repay their debts. These missions make you uncomfortable by design, forcing you to be the villain in someone else's story. Some debtors are sympathetic, legitimately unable to pay due to circumstances beyond their control. Others are less sympathetic, having squandered money or made poor choices. The game lets you handle these situations various ways, from collecting ruthlessly to forgiving debts, with Arthur's dialogue and honour changing based on your choices. These missions contribute to Arthur's character development, planting seeds of doubt about the gang's activities and his own role in causing suffering. The Braithwaite Manor burning is one of the game's most cathartic moments of revenge, with the gang united in their fury after Jack's kidnapping. The assault on the manor is intense and satisfying, letting you unleash violence with moral justification. The image of Dutch shooting Catherine Braithwaite while the manor burns behind him is iconic, representing the gang at their most dangerous and unified. This mission is a high point before things begin falling apart, showing what the gang can accomplish when they work together with clear purpose. The burning manor becomes a symbol of the gang's power and the dangers of crossing them. The Guarma missions featuring the revolutionary conflict show imperialism and exploitation on a scale beyond the American frontier, with corporations and governments crushing local populations for profit. These missions expand the game's political themes beyond just the death of the outlaw way of life, showing global systems of oppression and violence. Arthur's involvement in the revolution is reluctant and circumstantial. He's trying to survive and return home rather than being ideologically committed. The Guarma section demonstrates that the forces destroying the Vander Lynn gang are part of larger historical movements, crushing independence and freedom worldwide. The moment when Arthur realizes Micah is the rat, and that Dutch won't do anything about it, is heartbreaking, showing Arthur's loyalty and faith being betrayed by the man he considered a father. Arthur's confrontation with Dutch about Micah reveals how far Dutch has fallen, how his paranoia and ego prevent him from seeing the truth right in front of him. This betrayal is more painful than Micah's treachery because Arthur expected Micah to be a snake, but trusted Dutch to be wise and just. The scene where Arthur finally accepts that Dutch is lost and won't choose him over Micah is devastating character work. The optional mission where Arthur helps a widow and her son over multiple encounters shows his capacity for kindness and his desire to do good despite his violent lifestyle. These missions have no big rewards beyond honour and the satisfaction of helping someone who genuinely needs it. The widow's gratitude and the son's admiration show Arthur what he could have been in a different life, what a normal existence might have looked like. These encounters are easy to miss but provide important counterpoint to the main story's tragedy, showing that Arthur did make positive differences in some people's lives. The veterans you can encounter, including one who lost his limbs in the war, provide commentary on how America treats its soldiers after they're no longer useful. These encounters are brief but powerful, showing men destroyed by service to their country and then abandoned. Arthur's interactions with veterans can be sympathetic or cruel based on player choice, but the game clearly wants you to recognize the injustice of their situations. These encounters add historical context about the aftermath of the Civil War and the human cost of national conflicts. The monk you can meet who seeks meaning and enlightenment in the wilderness provides philosophical discussions that Arthur engages with thoughtfully. These conversations let Arthur express his doubts and fears, his sense that his life has been wasted on violence and crime. The monk offers perspective on redemption and peace that Arthur wants to believe in, but struggles to accept. These optional conversations add spiritual dimension to Arthur's character, showing he thinks about meaning and morality even if he doesn't always act on those thoughts. The blind prophet in St. Denis who recognizes Arthur's sins and predicts his fate is an eerie encounter that suggests supernatural knowledge or exceptional insight. The prophet's pronouncements feel prophetic and true, creating uncanny moments where a random NPC seems to see through Arthur completely. These encounters play with the game's otherwise realistic tone, introducing elements that feel mystical or ordained by fate. The prophet serves as a conscience figure, reminding Arthur that his actions have consequences and that judgment is coming. The mayor of Saint Denis and the corruption questline exposes political corruption and shows how power operates in civilized society. The missions reveal that the respectable politicians and businessmen are as corrupt and violent as any outlaw, just better at hiding it behind respectability. This content reinforces the game's themes about there being no real difference between criminals and the establishment. Both are willing to use violence and deception to get what they want. The civilized veneer of Saint Denis hides brutality that equals anything in the wilderness. The night folk in the swamps are terrifying enemies who attack silently with melee weapons, creating horror, movie moments in an otherwise Western game. These encounters are deliberately scary, using darkness and surprise to unsettle players. The night folk's nature and origins are never fully explained, leaving them mysterious and disturbing. Their presence makes the swamps feel dangerous and wrong, creating dread that contrasts with the open beauty of other regions. The night folk contribute to Lemoyne's gothic southern horror atmosphere. The Murphy brood in the mountains are degenerate cannibals representing frontier life at its absolute worst. Humans who've descended into savagery. These enemies are more unsettling than normal outlaws because of implications about what they do to victims. The Murphy encounters are often ambushes where you're lured into traps, creating paranoia about exploring certain areas. Their presence makes the mountains feel lawless and threatening, a place where civilization has completely failed to establish itself. The Skinner's gang in the epilogue represents the death throes of outlaw culture, a group so depraved and disorganized they're barely human anymore. Fighting the Skinners as John shows how the West has become increasingly violent and anarchic as traditional structures collapse. The Skinners lack any ideology or purpose beyond violence, making them nihilistic antagonists who represent the worst possible outcome of frontier lawlessness. Their presence in the epilogue creates threats for John to face while establishing his ranch. The raider ambushes where outlaws block roads and demand money create tense choices about whether to pay, fight, or flee. These encounters reinforce that travelling is dangerous and that predators recognize the roads as hunting grounds. The game rewards different approaches, with fighting being possible but risky, while fleeing or paying also being valid choices. These random ambushes prevent travel from becoming routine, maintaining tension even on familiar routes. The rival gang encounters where you stumble on criminals fighting lawmen or each other create opportunities to scavenge after battles or intervene for honour. These situations show that conflict is happening throughout the world independent of your actions, that violence is endemic to this society. You can loot the bodies after others have done the killing, taking advantage of chaos without directly causing it. These encounters create moral ambiguity about whether Arthur is better than other criminals, or just luckier and more skilled. The doctor in Saint Denis, who offers special items if you rob his back room, creates a choice between maintaining honour and accessing unique equipment. The robbery reveals the doctor is performing illegal experiments or buying stolen goods, complicating the moral equation. This encounter shows that even respected professionals in civilized towns are involved in criminal activity when it's profitable. The special items available from the doctor create incentive to do the robbery despite the honour loss. The gunslinger missions, where you track down legendary gunmen and either duel or talk them down, creates a meta-commentary on Western mythology and the creation of legends. These missions show that famous gunslingers are often just men with inflated reputations, not the mythic figures their stories suggest. The choice to kill or spare each gunslinger affects the questline's outcome and what kind of story gets told about these men. The gunslinger missions explore how legends are created through storytelling, rather than reflecting absolute truth about individuals. The treasure maps that lead to significant cash rewards create scavenger hunts across the map, encouraging exploration of remote areas. The maps use artistic representations of landmarks rather than exact GPS coordinates, requiring observation and interpretation. Successfully following treasure maps provides satisfaction beyond just the money, creating puzzle-solving accomplishment. The treasures often hide in beautiful or interesting locations, rewarding exploration with both loot and environmental storytelling. The cigarette card collection, featuring historical figures and period subjects, creates a completionist challenge while providing historical education. The cards cover everything from famous people to animals to locations, each with a brief description providing context. Collecting all cards requires extensive exploration and interaction with the world's systems. The cards were actual collectibles in the late 1800s, so their inclusion is historically accurate as well as being a game mechanic. Many players spend hours hunting for cards, treating them as the primary completionist goal. The dominoes and five-finger fillet games provide period-appropriate entertainment with actual gameplay rules requiring skill or luck. These minigames create social activities for Arthur to engage in, showing downtime and normal leisure. The games have competitive elements where you can win or lose money based on skill and chance. Different locations offer these games at different stakes, creating variety in the gambling experience. Some players enjoy these mini-games as relaxing breaks from violence and missions. The arm wrestling competitions scattered throughout saloons provide brief tests of button-mashing prowess with modest rewards. These activities are simple, but create moments of masculine competition and socializing appropriate to the setting. Winning arm wrestling matches provides minor honor and satisfaction, but isn't crucial to any progression systems. The inclusion of arm wrestling shows attention to period-appropriate recreational activities. The stranger missions, featuring unique characters with complete story arcs, provide some of the game's best content outside the main narrative. These missions range from helping a photographer to assisting an inventor to tracking a serial killer, each with multiple parts. The stranger missions often have moral complexity or humour that mained missions lack due to their lighter stakes. Characters from stranger missions become memorable despite limited screen time because of strong writing and performance. Some stranger missions have outcomes that change based on when you complete them, relative to story progression. The Charlotte Balfour missions, where Arthur teaches a widow survival skills after her husband's death, create a touching relationship showing Arthur's gentler side. Arthur's patience and kindness with Charlotte demonstrates the man he could have been outside his outlaw life. The missions span the story, with Arthur checking on Charlotte periodically and seeing her grow more confident and capable. In the epilogue, John can visit Charlotte and learn what happened to her, providing closure to her story. These missions reward players who complete them with emotional payoff, rather than just mechanical rewards. The Penelope Braithwaite and Beau Gray forbidden romance between feuding families creates a Romeo and Juliet situation where Arthur helps young lovers escape their family's hatred. The missions are light-hearted compared to most content, providing romantic comedy relief. The resolution depends on player choices, with the couple either escaping successfully or facing different consequences. This storyline shows that not all frontier stories are about violence and death, that love and hope exist even in harsh circumstances. The Albert Mason photography missions feature Arthur helping a nature photographer who's hilariously unprepared for wilderness dangers. The missions require protecting Albert from animals he's trying to photograph, creating comedy from the gulf between his artistic ambitions and survival skills. Arthur's exasperation with Albert's recklessness creates funny dialogue and situations, The quest line ends with Albert successfully completing his work and thanking Arthur, creating a rare, completely positive outcome. These missions demonstrate Arthur's capacity for patience and his respect for artistic pursuits, despite his own practical nature. The Hamish Sinclair missions feature Arthur befriending a veteran living alone in the wilderness, creating a genuine friendship between two men who respect each other's capabilities. The missions involve hunting and fishing together, simple masculine bonding activities without ulterior motives. Hamish's death during the final mission is unexpected and sad, with Arthur mourning a true friend. Hamish leaves Arthur his horse Buell, creating a lasting memorial to their friendship. These missions are among the game's most emotionally genuine, showing Arthur forming a connection based on mutual respect and shared values. In the epilogue, John can claim Buell if Arthur didn't, but the emotional weight is less without having built the relationship personally. The Sister Calderon missions feature Arthur helping a nun with charity work while having philosophical discussions about faith and redemption. These conversations are some of Arthur's most honest moments where he expresses his doubts and regrets. The sister recognizes Arthur's goodness despite his violent life, offering him forgiveness and understanding. The final encounter in the epilogue where John meets the sister and learns about Arthur's final days provides closure and shows that Arthur found some peace before his death. These missions are crucial for high honor playthroughs, showing Arthur actively seeking redemption and meaning. The veteran missing his friend's prosthetic leg creates a tragicomic quest about friendship and loyalty, despite loss and disability. The missions show how the Civil War left men physically and emotionally scarred, struggling to rebuild lives afterward. The interactions between the two veterans show genuine affection and history, creating a fully realized relationship in just a few scenes. The questline's resolution depends on player choices but can end positively or tragically. These missions provide commentary on disability and veteran care while remaining character-focused rather than didactic. The Aberdeen pig farm encounter is one of the game's most disturbing, with the seemingly friendly couple drugging and robbing Arthur. The encounter is designed to be unsettling, with the couple's behaviour creating unease before the betrayal. If you return later, you can find evidence of the couple's other crimes and recover your money. The encounter serves as a reminder that danger doesn't just come from obvious outlaws, but also from seemingly normal people. The Aberdeen encounter became legendary in the community for how effectively it creates discomfort and surprise. The Devil Hermit encounter, where Arthur stumbles on a madman living in isolation, provides brief horror movie vibes. The hermit's disturbing appearance and behaviour create immediate threat, with the encounter often resulting in violence. The hermit's cave contains disturbing evidence of his descent into madness. This encounter is easy to miss, but memorable for those who find it, representing the psychological dangers of isolation and wilderness living. The hermit shows what happens when humans separate completely from society and sanity. The man-made mutant encounter with a scientist creating horrible hybrid animals provides body horror in an otherwise grounded game. The encounter is brief but disturbing, showing unethical experimentation creating suffering. The mutant's existence raises questions about what happens when science proceeds without ethics or oversight. This encounter is deliberately placed off the beaten path, rewarding players who explore thoroughly with nightmare fuel. The inclusion of such strange content shows Rockstar's willingness to break genre boundaries occasionally. The feral man living wild in the forest who communicates only through grunts represents humans reverting to animal state. The encounter raises questions about the line between human and animal, civilization and wildness. Arthur can, Interact with the feral man various ways, from treating him kindly to killing him. The feral man's existence suggests that civilization is a thin veneer that can be lost under the right circumstances. This encounter contributes to the game's themes about wilderness versus civilization and what defines humanity. The time-travelling person encounter, where someone from the future appears briefly before vanishing, creates science fiction elements in the Western setting. The encounter is deliberately ambiguous, with evidence suggesting time travel but no definitive proof. The time traveller's modern clothing and confused behaviour create surreal moments that break the game's realistic tone. This encounter sparked extensive community discussion and theory crafting about whether supernatural or science fiction elements exist in the game's world. The ambiguity is intentional, letting players interpret the encounter however they prefer. The ghost sightings scattered throughout the game create supernatural atmosphere, with apparitions appearing in specific locations under certain conditions. These encounters are subtle and easily missed, requiring players to be in the right place at the right time. The ghosts don't interact with Arthur directly, but create eerie ambience suggesting the world contains forces beyond explanation. The ghost encounters appeal to players interested in mysteries and supernatural content while remaining optional for those preferring realistic gameplay. The Agnesdaud ghost near the swamps mourns her lost love, creating a tragic spectre tied to the location. The encounter is melancholy rather than frightening, showing grief outlasting death. The ghost appears at night, making the encounter feel like a reward for exploring dangerous areas after dark. This content adds gothic southern horror elements to Lemoyne, contributing to the region's distinctive atmosphere. The tragic backstory discoverable through searching the area creates environmental storytelling rewarding investigation. The Otis Miller treasure hunt involves piecing together clues from environmental storytelling across the map, creating an extensive scavenger hunt. The treasure represents significant wealth, but requires patience and observation to locate. The hunt encourages exploring remote areas and reading environmental clues carefully. Successfully finding the treasure provides satisfaction beyond just the monetary reward, creating accomplishment from puzzle solving. The Otis Miller legend becomes part of the game's internal mythology, showing how the West creates and perpetuates stories about hidden wealth and lost fortunes. The Poisonous Trail treasure map found on a murdered treasure hunter creates a challenging navigation puzzle through treacherous terrain. The treasure is intentionally difficult to reach, requiring careful planning and execution. The reward justifies the effort, providing significant money and unique items. This treasure hunt shows how greed leads people into danger, with multiple failed treasure hunters discoverable along the way. The environmental storytelling around this treasure creates a mini-narrative about obsession and risk. The high-stakes treasure map leading to a remote location with significant rewards creates endgame content for dedicated explorers. The treasure is hidden well enough that most players require guides to find it, making discovery feel like accessing secret content. The wealth from this treasure can trivialize the economy if found early, creating debate about whether to pursue treasures or maintain financial struggle. These treasures represent the game's most valuable hidden content, rewarding thorough exploration with resources exceeding normal gameplay rewards. The Elemental Trail treasure map, requiring travel through varied terrain types, creates a geography lesson about the map's diversity. The treasure hunt takes you through mountains, forests, plains, and swamps, showcasing environmental variety. The journey becomes as valuable as the destination, forcing appreciation of the world's design. Successfully completing this hunt requires understanding the map's layout and being comfortable navigating without constant GPS assistance. The treasure provides typical rewards, but the experience of the hunt creates the real value. The landmarks scattered throughout the map provide natural navigation points and create the sense that the geography has history and significance. These landmarks often have backstories discoverable through observation and documents. Photographing landmarks contributes to completion percentage while encouraging you to visit remote locations. The landmarks create a sense of place and history, showing that the land existed long before Arthur and Will persist after him. Some landmarks are beautiful, while others are ominous, but all contribute to making the world feel real and significant. The rock carvings scattered throughout the world require searching cliff faces and mountainsides in remote locations. Finding all carvings unlocks additional content and provides unique rewards. The carvings depict mysterious symbols and figures suggesting ancient mysteries and lost civilizations. Successfully photographing all carvings requires extensive exploration and climbing to dangerous locations. This collectible challenge appeals to completionists while creating excuses to explore the map's vertical spaces. The dream catchers hanging in trees throughout the world are easy to miss, but provide unique rewards when all are found. These collectibles require looking up and paying attention to tree branches, training players to scan their environment thoroughly. The dream catchers connect to Native American spirituality and create commentary on indigenous presence in the land. Finding all dream catchers provides closure to a story about loss and memory. This collectible hunt is among the game's most challenging due to the dream catcher's small size and camouflage against natural surroundings. The dinosaur bones scattered across the map create a paleontology quest, requiring search in realistic locations where fossils might be found. Sending bones to the paleontologist triggers story content and eventual rewards. The dinosaur quest provides education about paleontology while creating treasure hunt gameplay. Successfully finding all bones requires understanding terrain and geology, enough to predict where fossils might appear. This quest appeals to players interested in science and natural history, while providing gameplay structure for exploration. The exotic collectibles for Algernon Wasp require gathering specific plants, birds, and other natural specimens across the map. These requests are extensive and time-consuming, requiring mastery of hunting and gathering systems. The exotic quests provide endgame content that takes dozens of hours to complete fully. The rewards include unique items and substantial payment, but the real appeal is completionist satisfaction. These quests divide the community between those who enjoy collecting and those who find it tedious. The exotic requests create reasons to engage deeply with the game's natural systems and to explore every region thoroughly. The orchid collection for Algernon specifically requires finding rare flowers in dangerous swamp locations, combining collection with survival challenge. The orchids are beautiful and distinctly rendered, making them identifiable once you know what to look for. Collecting all orchids requires returning to the swamps repeatedly and searching carefully in alligator-infested areas. The orchid quest tests your observation skills and willingness to risk Arthur's life for flowers. Successfully completing this collection provides satisfaction from mastering both finding hidden objects and surviving hostile environments. The bird collecting for Algernon requires perfect kills with small game arrows, creating a hunting challenge that tests precision. The birds are spread across all regions, requiring travel and familiarity with each species' habitat. Some birds only appear in specific weather or time conditions, requiring patience and planning. The bird collection quest takes exploration and combines it with hunting mastery, creating multifaceted challenge. Successfully collecting all birds demonstrates comprehensive knowledge of the game's natural systems and geography. The John Marston character model in the epilogue was controversially changed in patches, with some players preferring the original appearance and others supporting the updated version. The changes attempted to make John look more like his Red Dead Redemption appearance, creating continuity between games. This alteration sparked community debate about whether maintaining the epilogue's original vision or creating series consistency mattered more. The controversy showed how invested players became in character appearances and how even small changes can generate strong reactions. Rockstar's decision to alter John's appearance post-launch demonstrated their continued engagement with the game and willingness to respond to feedback. The Mexican border area and rumours of cut content in Mexico sparked extensive speculation about whether Rockstar originally intended to include Mexican locations. Data miners found evidence suggesting Mexico was planned but cut before release, possibly for time or scope reasons. The inclusion of Mexico in the first Red Dead Redemption made its absence in the prequel conspicuous. The border area is detailed enough to suggest it was meant to be accessible, with buildings and terrain visible across the river. Whether Mexico content will ever be added through DLC remains a persistent community question years after release. The single-player DLC that never materialized disappointed many players who wanted expanded story content beyond the main game. Rockstar focused on Red Dead Online instead, prioritizing multiplayer over additional single-player experiences. This decision paralleled what happened with Grand Theft Auto V, where single-player expansions were cancelled in favour of online content. The lack of story DLC meant the complete edition of the single-player experience existed at launch, without additional narrative content added later. Players created extensive wish lists of what DLC could have explored, from young Arthur adventures to alternative character perspectives. The Red Dead Online mode that launched after the main game struggled to find its identity and satisfy players seeking meaningful content. The online mode faced criticism for grind-heavy progression and lack of compelling story content matching the single-player experience. Rockstar continued supporting online for years with various updates and roles, but never achieved the massive success of GTA Online. The online mode exists separately from the single-player story, with different characters and locations in the same world. Some players never touched online, while others spent hundreds of hours in multiplayer experiences. The naturalist role in Red Dead Online added by Harriet Davenport created conservation-focused gameplay, contrasting with hunting-focused content. This role divided players between those who enjoyed the conservation angle and those who found it preachy or restrictive. The addition of new roles attempted to provide long-term engagement hooks for online players beyond just shooting and robbing. The naturalist content showed that even in an outlaw game, there was room for alternative playstyles focused on preservation rather than exploitation. The legendary bounty hunter missions in online mode provided challenging PvE content designed for cooperation and high-level play. These missions featured unique targets with complex mechanics requiring strategy and teamwork. The legendary bounties provided endgame content for dedicated online players seeking challenge beyond standard missions. The quality of these missions showed that Rockstar could create compelling online content when they invested resources appropriately. The Moonshiner role in online mode added business management and story missions featuring Maggie Fike and her bootlegging operation. This role combined passive income generation with active mission content and social spaces. The Moonshiner Shack provided player-owned space for customization and entertaining other players. The addition of this role showed Rockstar experimenting with different content types beyond just combat and exploration. The Moonshiner questline was among online mode's better story content, creating a satisfying arc about revenge and building a business. The collector role encouraging exploration and item gathering became controversial for potentially encouraging use of third-party tools and maps. Players use community-created resources to locate collectibles efficiently, arguably undermining the exploration gameplay Rockstar intended. The collector role provided reliable income for players willing to spend time gathering, creating economic imbalance. The randomization of collectible spawns in later updates attempted to reduce third-party map effectiveness and encourage actual exploration. The trader role, focusing on hunting and selling animal products to crypts, created familiar gameplay loop from single-player hunting. This role rewarded players who mastered hunting mechanics and understood animal spawns and behaviors. The trader role's delivery missions created PvP opportunities where other players could attack your cargo for profit. The risk-reward of long-distance deliveries created tension and forced decisions about whether to risk valuable cargo for better payouts. The photography challenges in online mode encourage players to capture specific subjects and share images with the community. These challenges combined artistic expression with gameplay objectives, creating different ways to engage with the world. The photography content appealed to players interested in virtual photography and provided non-violent gameplay activities. The challenges showed that Red Dead's world was beautiful enough to support photography as standalone content. The poker games and other gambling activities in online mode created social spaces where players could interact without combat. These activities provided breaks from action-focused content and created opportunities for social gameplay. The poker games operated on actual poker rules, with player skill determining outcomes rather than purely random chance. The gambling content had to navigate legal restrictions in some regions where virtual gambling with real money implications faced regulation. The role-playing community that emerged in Red Dead Online created elaborate social structures and stories independent of Rockstar's provided content. Players created their own characters, backstories and relationships, using the game world as a stage for collaborative storytelling. The RP community often policed itself, establishing servers and guidelines for interaction that created immersive experiences. This emergent gameplay showed that players could find depth and meaning beyond what developers explicitly created, using game tools for purposes never originally intended. The private lobbies and smaller session sizes addressed player complaints about griefing and unwanted PvP encounters. These options let players experience online content without constant threat from aggressive players. The addition of these features showed Rockstar responding to community feedback about online experience quality. The balance between maintaining Wild West danger and preventing frustration from griefing remained ongoing challenge. The Outlaw Passes, providing seasonal content and progression systems, attempted to create live service engagement in Red Dead Online. These passes provided goals and rewards for regular play, encouraging players to log in frequently. The pass system generated revenue while giving players sense of progression and achievement. The quality and value of passes varied, with some being well received and others criticised for lacking compelling rewards. The fast travel posts added throughout the map in updates addressed player complaints about travel time in online mode. These quality-of-life improvements showed Rockstar willing to adjust online experience based on feedback, even when changes contradicted single-player design philosophy. The travel options created tension between maintaining immersion and respecting player time, especially in multiplayer where audiences had different priorities than single-player players. The animal spawn issues that plagued early Red Dead Online created frustration for roles dependent on hunting. The technical problems took months to resolve, damaging player trust and causing many to abandon the mode. The spawn issues highlighted the challenges of maintaining complex ecological systems in multiplayer environments with many players. The eventual fixes came too late for some players who'd already moved on to other games. The communication system in online mode using emotes and voice chat created both positive interactions and toxic behavior. The proximity voice chat added immersion when used appropriately, but also enabled harassment. The emote system let players communicate without voice, but limited expression compared to text or voice chat. The balance between enabling social interaction and preventing abuse remained an ongoing challenge in online community management. The player-created content and mission system that was discussed but never fully implemented would have let players create custom experiences. The absence of robust creation tools limited the community's ability to extend the game's life through user-generated content. Other games with strong creation systems demonstrated that player content could sustain engagement for years beyond official support. The decision not to include comprehensive creation tools represented missed opportunity for community-driven longevity. The mods created by PC players expanded gameplay, improved graphics, and added features Rockstar never implemented officially. The modding community created everything from realistic survival overhauls to silly cosmetic additions. Some mods addressed widely requested features like better fast travel or enhanced bounty hunting. Rockstar's relationship with modders was sometimes tense, with some mods being shut down over concerns about online play impacts. The modding community kept single-player experience fresh for dedicated players years after release. The graphics mods that enhanced already stunning visuals showed that even Rockstar's impressive technical achievement could be pushed further. These mods added improved lighting, textures, and effects that made the game look even more spectacular. The mod community's work demonstrated passionate dedication to the game and willingness to invest time making it even better. Some modded graphics approaches became so popular that players considered them essential to PC experience. The realism mods that increased survival difficulty and removed convenience features appealed to players wanting more hardcore experience. These mods added needs systems, reduced health regeneration, and made death more punishing. The existence of realism mods showed that some players wanted even more simulation depth than the base game provided. The variety of available mods meant different players could customize their experience to match their preferences. These save editor tools that let players modify character attributes and unlock content created debate about legitimate versus cheating play. Some players used editors to bypass grind and access content immediately, while others viewed this as undermining intended progression. The availability of these tools on PC created different experiences than console versions, where save editing was much more difficult. The save editor discussion highlighted different player philosophies about progression and achievement. The photo mode mods that expanded the limited official tools let players create even more impressive virtual photography. These mods added camera options and effects not available in the base game's photo mode. The enhanced photography tools let dedicated virtual photographers create stunning images showcasing the game's world. The mod community's photography work became promotional material demonstrating the game's visual achievements. The first-person mode available on modern platforms changed how many players experience the game, creating more immersive perspective. First-person made combat more intense and exploration more intimate, changing the feel of familiar content. Some players completed entire playthroughs in first-person, while others used it situationally for specific activities. The inclusion of first-person mode required extensive additional work, essentially creating two different player experiences in one game. The HDR implementation on compatible displays enhanced the already impressive visual presentation with expanded color range and contrast. The proper HDR support showed Rockstar's commitment to taking advantage of modern display technology. Players with HDR displays reported the implementation being among gaming's best, properly utilizing the technology. The enhanced visuals made already beautiful scenes even more striking and immersive. The 4K resolution support on enhanced consoles and PC let players experience unprecedented detail in character models and environments. The increased resolution revealed artistic details that lower resolutions couldn't display effectively. The visual jump from base console to 4K PC was substantial enough that some players considered it transformative. The technical scalability showed strong foundation in art and technology that could take advantage of improved hardware. The frame rate boost on newer hardware made gameplay smoother and more responsive than original console experience. The jump from 30 FPS to 60 FPS significantly improved feel of movement and combat. Some players who originally played on base consoles were shocked by how much better the game felt at higher frame rates. The improved performance demonstrated how frame rate affects game feel beyond just visual smoothness. The ray tracing features discussed for potential future updates would add realistic lighting and reflections beyond current implementation. The speculation about ray tracing showed community interest in pushing visual quality even further. Whether Rockstar would invest resources in adding ray tracing to older game remained uncertain. The visual quality without ray tracing was already so high that additional improvements would be refinements rather than transformations. The load times on newer consoles with SSD storage eliminated much of the waiting that plagued original release. The fast travel that once involved lengthy loading screens became nearly instantaneous on modern hardware. The improved load times made death less frustrating when reloading happened quickly, rather than requiring minutes of waiting. The technical improvements showed how storage technology advances benefited games designed before SSDs were standard. The seamless transition between gameplay and cutscenes without loading screens created unprecedented cinematic flow. This technical achievement required careful optimization and asset management throughout the entire game. The smooth transitions between control and story made the experience feel more like interactive film than traditional video game. The elimination of loading screens during story progression maintained emotional momentum and immersion. The level of detail system that loaded different quality assets based on distance allowed impressive vistas without overwhelming hardware. The LOD system was sophisticated enough that transitions between detail levels were rarely noticeable during normal play. The technical implementation of this system let the game maintain consistent performance while displaying massive draw distances. The visual consistency across different distances contributed to sense of world being real, rather than game environments loading around player. The weather transition system that gradually changed conditions rather than instantly switching created realistic atmospheric changes. The smooth weather transitions meant storms built naturally and cleared gradually, rather than snapping between states. This attention to meteorological realism contributed to immersion. and made weather feel like natural phenomenon rather than game mechanic. The weather patterns repeated enough to be recognisable, but varied enough to feel organic rather than scripted. The cloud system that featured realistic formations and movements added dynamic element to already impressive skies. The clouds cast shadows on terrain and affected lighting conditions realistically. The sky was detailed enough that players could spend time just watching clouds move and change. The atmospheric simulation extended to altitude effects, with clouds appearing at appropriate heights for their types. The mud and snow deformation that showed footprints and wheel tracks created tactile sense of interacting with environment. The deformation persisted appropriately, slowly fading rather than instantly disappearing. This detail added to sense that Arthur and other characters actually affected the world through their presence and movement. The deformation worked for multiple object types, including horses, wagons, and individual characters. The realistic water physics with appropriate buoyancy and flow created believable water interactions throughout diverse water bodies. Rivers flowed with current that affected swimming and boat travel realistically. The water reacted to objects and characters entering it with appropriate splashing and displacement. The underwater environments were fully detailed, even though players spent limited time beneath surface. The fire propagation system that let flames spread between flammable objects created dynamic element to combat and exploration. Fires started by lanterns or gunfire could grow and spread to nearby structures and vegetation. The fire provided both visual spectacle and gameplay consideration, with spread fires creating hazards and denying areas. The attention to fire behaviour added realism and consequence to using flame-based weapons or knocking over light sources. The blood and wound system that showed injury location and severity created visceral combat feedback. Characters displayed blood on clothing, and bodies appropriate to where they were shot or stabbed. The wound system combined with ragdoll physics to create unique death animations for virtually every kill. The attention to detail in violence served the mature tone while also providing gameplay feedback about combat effectiveness. The clothing wear and tear that showed damage accumulation on Arthur's outfits created visual storytelling about his adventures. Clothes became dirty, torn and blood-stained through normal activities and combat. The damage persisted until Arthur bathed or changed clothes, creating visual continuity across gaming sessions. The clothing damage system encouraged regular bathing and outfit changes to maintain Arthur's appearance. The layered clothing system that let Arthur wear multiple items simultaneously created extensive customization possibilities. The layers affected Arthur's temperature resistance and appearance in realistic ways. The system let players create unique looks, combining different pieces from various sets. The clothing combinations numbered in thousands when accounting for all possible items. Thank you for listening and please subscribe.